Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm smiling big because of these seat dancers in the front row. I feel like this is a good way to start today. Thank you, Manish, so much for having me. It's a real thrill and an honor to be with you all. And I also loved hearing Barbara refer to you as UUs, because that feels really childlike and joyful. So I'm happy to be amongst the UUs today. And it's Valentine's Day weekend, a holiday that is typically focused on love through a romantic lens. Flowers and chocolates and cards and a good meal, hopefully. And those are all beautiful things. But today I want to talk about love in a much broader, more consequential sense. The kind of love that matters not just in our relationships, but in moments like this one, when the world feels fractured and frightening and at times deeply cruel. So many of us are carrying a lot right now. I suspect I can speak for most of us in this room. There's grief, there's anger, there is fear, there's heartbreak, there's exhaustion, there's a sense of disbelief about what is happening in our country and about the forms of cruelty that are being normalized in plain sight. And it can feel entirely overwhelming. I know it does for me often. And I'm not here to offer you all spiritual platitudes today and forced optimism. I'm here to honor and advocate for the power of love right now and always. So I experience love as energy, an energy that is alive within us and outside of us at all times, which means it is in our capacity to be intentional about engaging with that energy whenever we like. And when we engage with creative energy, for an example, we may feel called to write or to sing or to dance or to cook a beautiful meal. When we engage with love's energy, we feel called to be kind, to be empathetic, to offer our compassion, to forgive, to honor the clarity of our heart over the fears of our mind. And I want to be clear, choosing love does not mean looking away. It does not mean in any way compromising our convictions or pretending that harm isn't happening. Love asks something braver of us. It asks us to stay present and honest to what's happening around us and within us without abandoning our integrity or our humanity. And that's what I want to explore with you this morning. What does it mean, really, to live from love in a time like this? One of the most persistent myths, especially in spiritual contexts, about love is that it's passive. It's synonymous with being agreeable or quiet or endlessly patient. And love may show up in all of those ways at times, of course, but choosing love is often the hardest, bravest, and sometimes loudest choice we can possibly make, especially in these divisive times. So love is not separate from activism or resistance, should you choose to participate in either. It's what gives these things their depth and direction. So living from love doesn't mean we stop naming cruelty. It doesn't mean we stop organizing, protesting, protecting the vulnerable, drawing firm boundaries wherever your heart calls you. Living from love means we refuse to let fear, contempt, or dehumanization become the fuel for our actions. Because when they do, even in the name of justice, we risk recreating the harm that we seek to dismantle. I know how easy that is to say and how hard it is to live. For 13 years of my life, I was part of a cult in the Bay Area, just north of San Francisco, a small spiritual community centered around a guru whom I believed to be enlightened and whom I believed was going to help me become enlightened. Spoiler alert, I didn't become enlightened. I didn't join because I was naive or lacking discernment. I joined because I was seeking belonging and meaning and certainty. I wanted to feel seen. I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel chosen. And initially in this community, I felt all of those things. There was clarity, there was community, there was so much love and friendship. There was a shared moral framework. But slowly and surely, as what happens in cults, I began to override my own inner knowing. And doubt was reframed as weakness. My discomfort meant I needed to try harder. Questions were discouraged. Challenging the guru in any way was framed as resistance to God's will. My guru professed himself to be a puppet of God. And if I objected to him, I was objecting to God. And I grew to believe that. And I was surrounded by people who believed that. What I lost during those years, even inside of what appeared to be a very loving spiritual container, and in so many ways was a very loving spiritual container, I lost my capacity to trust myself. And I learned to surrender my own discernment in order to belong. And that experience has shaped, in part, how I understand what's happening in our country right now. Because this dynamic is not unique to cults. It is a deeply human vulnerability. Any group, spiritual, political, or cultural, that requires us to abandon our inner authority in exchange for belonging is first and foremost pretty culty, and then also is asking us to trade integrity for inclusion. And that trade is everywhere. It's easy to see this dynamic at work in movements we oppose. I suspect many of you are thinking right now entirely of MAGA, the MAGA culture, or Christian nationalism, or authoritarian leadership. And to be clear, there's no doubt that groupthink and cognitive dissonance and moral outsourcing is alive and well in those groups, and it is causing real harm here. We are seeing and feeling this every single day. But if we're honest, we have to acknowledge that progressive spaces struggle with this too. Nearly all spaces do, because this is human. The pressure to conform, the fear of being cast out, the subtle rewards for certainty, the rejection of or even punishment for nuance. When belonging feels conditional, integrity becomes fragile. We posture, we perform righteousness, we shame others to reassure ourselves that we are on the right side of things. We dehumanize those whose dehumanizing efforts we are resisting. And while that may feel momentarily empowering, I have done all of those things, still sometimes do all of those things. And it does feel momentarily empowering. But it comes at a cost. Because shame, whether directed outward or inward, hardens us. It narrows our vision. It distances us from the very values we claim to be protecting, the very future we say we want to co-create. And I want to be clear, being compassionate does not mean you are approving. It is not forgiveness on demand. It is not something we demand from those who are being harmed. Compassion is simply a practice we engage in so that we don't become what we're resisting. Author Glennon Doyle often shares the story of a Vietnam War protester who stood in front of the White House every night with a single candle. And when he was asked if he thought that what he was doing was having any change in the administration, his response to that was, "I'm not here to change them. I'm here so they don't change me." And that really strikes me. I have been struggling deeply with this administration to stay in my heart. I have struggled within all the divisiveness here to remain compassionate for those I don't agree with. In the face of so much cruelty, I've struggled to stay connected to my own integrity, to who I truly am beyond all this noise and insanity. Because ultimately, that's the question underneath all of this. How do we resist cruelty without letting cruelty reshape us? How do we stay in our hearts when we're outraged How do we face dehumanizers without dehumanizing? How do we tell the truth without abandoning our humanity? In my experience, one answer to these questions is simple, but as with everything, not easy. We prioritize self-love. We commit to loving ourselves, to being honest and compassionate with ourselves, to offering ourselves endless grace. And that may sound counterintuitive. I'm up here speaking about showing up with more love and kindness and compassion for others, and now I'm talking about self-love. But how we relate to ourselves informs how we relate to everyone and everything else. It always has, and it always will. We cannot remain in integrity with the world if we are constantly betraying and abandoning ourselves. It's not possible. And when we haven't learned to treat ourselves with kindness and grace, especially when we're anxious, wrong, overwhelmed, or afraid, we are far more likely to outsource our worth to groups and ideologies. We become reactive instead of rooted, performative instead of present. When I'm willing to recognize my inherent worth, worthy simply because I was born, worthy until the day I die, just like you, then I am much more likely to recognize the inherent worth and dignity in every other human being. That principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, is not just beautiful theology. It is revolutionary practice. If I believe I am only worthy when I am right, then I will treat others as only worthy when I believe they are right. If I relate to myself with shame and harshness, then I will relate to others with shame and harshness. This is how it works. We tend to give what we practice. So when I offer compassion to my flawed humanity, even when I react from fear instead of respond from love, I am more capable of offering compassion to others who do the same. And is this not what our hearts are asking of us? Is this not what our connection to God, to Spirit, is asking of us? We cannot say with certainty how we would show up right now had we lived the lives of those whose words and actions we find so abhorrent. Had we experienced their conditioning, their traumas, their fears, their family, we may have ended up exactly where they are, saying and doing the things that we see as ignorant and cruel. I let this understanding remind me to stay in empathy and compassion. And this is in no way suggesting agreement or condoning harm. It is only suggesting that we refuse to ignore the heart in these moments, that we refuse to bypass love. This is holding the candle in front of the White House so as not to let the cruelty and evils we see change us. And self-love is one of the things that allows us to pause, to return to our hearts and to respond, not react from there. It's what helps us resist shame as a strategy toward ourselves and others. It's what anchors our resistance and empathy rather than contempt. Self-love does not dilute our moral clarity. It stabilizes it. It energizes us to show up for others as we do for ourselves. And every wisdom tradition on the planet speaks to loving others as ourselves. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Buddha said, considering others as oneself, one should neither harm nor cause harm. Muhammad said, none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. And nature shows us that survival itself is relational. Nothing lives only for itself, and everything that endures does so by giving and receiving in balance. Ecosystems survive not through domination, but through reciprocity, life-sustaining life. And this too, in my opinion, comes back to self-love. I actually happen to believe that much of the time we are loving our neighbors as ourselves, which is to say not very well at all, with shame, with fear, with endless criticism. We treat ourselves harshly, and so we treat each other harshly. We bypass kindness and compassion and forgiveness. We reject love at our own expense and at the expense of our society. I don't speak about this as theory. I know personally the cost of rejecting love. When I was 14 years old, my parents were shot and killed in a fruit market they owned in Detroit. For years, when I thought about the man who killed them, it was only with hatred. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to die. But that hatred was poisoning me. So I made a conscious effort not to forgive him because I didn't think that was possible, but to understand him. I imagined what kind of despair must exist in someone who makes a choice like that. And I imagined his fear, and I imagined his loneliness, and I imagined that he must be feeling so afraid and so unloved and so desperate and so unseen. And I could relate to all those things. I recognized all those feelings in myself. I felt lost and desperate and alone and unloved and unseen. And the more I empathized with his humanity, the more the hatred dissolved. He became not just a killer, but a human being in pain who made a terrible choice. And I started to feel more and more compassion for him. And then one day, almost miraculously, I was thinking about him and realized I felt love for him and that I had forgiven him. I was no longer tethered to my relationship in a toxic and hateful way with him. It had gone. Empathy for me was the pathway to forgiveness. And that forgiveness is still one of the greatest gifts I have ever experienced in my life, and one of the most potent indicators of the power of love. Recently, I watched a video of people standing outside an ICE headquarters. Maybe some of you have seen this. This was in Minneapolis, and a huge crowd was singing, and what they were singing was, "It's okay to change your mind. Show us your courage. Leave this behind. It's okay to change your mind. Then you can join us. Join us here anytime." I was so moved by this. This is our potential. This is empathy. This is compassion. This is an invitation. To be clear, I've also watched many videos of people screaming profanities at ICE agents, and I found myself cheering them on vigorously. So I just want to be honest. And if I witnessed someone being dragged from their home, I don't know how I would respond. I can feel my blood boil just by imagining it. But I do know this. The world I want to help co-create, the beloved community so many of us long for, cannot be built from contempt. It is not possible. It must be built from courage, from integrity, and from love. And because I have power over only myself, and you have power over only yourselves, it is incumbent upon us to rest in integrity, to listen to the guidance of our hearts, and to love ourselves and our fellow human beings as fiercely as we can. The question isn't whether we want to create a more compassionate and loving world. Of course, everyone in this room does, of course. The question is this: from what place will we create it? I'd like to share a poem by Thich Nhat Hanh that speaks to our capacity for empathy and compassion, as well as the oneness we all experience with one another if we allow it. It's called "Please Call Me by My True Names." Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second, I am arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl refugee on a boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. I just want to invite you to take a deep breath in and an easy sigh out. I'll end with a short prayer. Feel free to close your eyes if you'd like to and place your hands over your heart if that feels good to you. May we learn to live from love, not as a concept, but as a daily embodied practice. May we remember our inherent worth and dignity, even as we falter. May we stay anchored in self-respect when fear invites us to abandon ourselves. May we tell the truth without cruelty and resist harm without perpetuating it. May we hold fast to compassion so that the forces we oppose do not shape who we become. And may the way we love ourselves quietly ripple outward into our relationships, our activism, our communities, helping us co-create a more just, courageous, and compassionate world. Amen. And blessed be. And thank you all so much. Much love.
Please rise, Abide.